Imagine walking into a high-end store, excited to explore, only to be greeted with cold stares and judgment. That's exactly what happened to Marcus, a humble man wearing worn-out clothes, as he stepped into an upscale boutique. The store manager, clearly sizing him up, made it her mission to embarrass him in front of everyone. She mocked his appearance, questioned his ability to afford anything, and even suggested he leave. The other customers awkwardly looked away, while Marcus quietly endured the humiliation. But what the manager didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just any customer. He was the CEO of the company that owned the very store she worked at. As the tension built, Marcus stayed calm, but the look in his eyes hinted he had something surprising in store. What happens next will leave you speechless. Stay tuned to see how this moment of judgment turns into an unforgettable lesson. Marcus walked calmly through the store, his hands brushing against the neatly arranged racks of expensive clothing. The manager's eyes followed him with thinly veiled disdain, her lips pursed as if his presence alone offended her. She muttered something to a sales associate, who glanced at Marcus and giggled nervously. The air was thick with judgment, but Marcus remained composed, his face unreadable. As he picked up a sleek, tailored suit, the manager approached, her voice dripping with condescension. "Sir, that's a bit out of your price range, isn't it? We have some clearance items in the back you might prefer." A few customers glanced over, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama. Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied the fabric of the suit as though weighing its worth. "I like this one," he said quietly, setting it aside. The manager smirked, crossing her arms. "Do you?" she said, her tone thick with doubt. The manager's smirk widened as she leaned in, clearly enjoying the power she thought she held. "You know," she began, her voice dripping with mock sweetness, "these suits are handmade. They're not something you just pick up on a whim. Do you even know your size?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, calmly continuing to browse. His silence seemed to unnerve her, but she quickly regained her composure. Meanwhile, a young sales associate watched the scene unfold from behind the counter. She'd seen the manager's sharp tongue embarrass customers before, but this felt different. There was something about the man's quiet confidence that didn't match his appearance. The tension grew when Marcus approached the register with the suit draped over his arm. "I'll take this," he said, his voice steady. The manager laughed, shaking her head. "Do you even know how much it costs?" she asked, her tone sharp. Marcus looked at her, his eyes calm but piercing. "I think I do," he replied simply, leaving everyone around him guessing who he really was. The manager stared at Marcus, her patience visibly thinning. "Sir, let me be clear," she said, her voice sharper now. "This isn't some thrift store. If you can't afford it, don't waste our time." A few customers whispered amongst themselves, sensing the growing tension. The young sales associate behind the counter shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Marcus and the manager. Marcus held his ground, his calm demeanor never faltering. "I'd like to pay for it now," he said, placing the suit gently on the counter. The manager rolled her eyes and grabbed the suit, scanning it with exaggerated slowness. "That'll be $2,500, she announced loudly, clearly hoping to make him reconsider. To her surprise, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card, sliding it across the counter. The room went silent. The manager froze for a moment, then forced a laugh. "Oh, a flashy card," she sneered. "Let's see if it works." As she swiped the card, her confidence wavered. Something about this man wasn't adding up, and she could feel the eyes of everyone in the store on her. The manager's smirk returned as she swiped the card, expecting the transaction to be declined, but the terminal beeped and the receipt printed instantly. Her smile faltered, replaced by confusion. She handed the card back reluctantly, struggling to maintain her composure. "Well, I suppose you got lucky this time," she muttered, her tone less confident. Marcus took the receipt calmly, folding it neatly before slipping it into his pocket. "Luck had nothing to do with it," he said, his voice steady but firm. Before the manager could respond, the young sales associate, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, looking at Marcus. "I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. Are you?" She trailed off, her eyes widening as recognition dawned. The manager frowned, glancing between them. "What's she talking about?" she snapped. But Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek business card, sliding it across the counter. The manager picked it up, her expression shifting from irritation to disbelief as she read the bold title beneath his name. *** Chief Executive Officer ***. The air in the room grew thick with tension as she realized who she had been humiliating all along. But Marcus wasn't done yet. "Perhaps we should discuss how this store represents my company," he said, his calm tone carrying a sharp edge. The manager's face turned pale as the weight of her mistake sank in. She stammered, "I had no idea. Sir, please, I didn't mean." But Marcus held up his hand, silencing her. The store had gone completely quiet, every customer and employee frozen, watching the scene unfold. Marcus's calm demeanor remained, but there was a new intensity in his gaze. "I came here today to see how my staff treats people," he said, his voice measured but firm. "Not the people in fancy clothes, but those who may not look the part. Clearly, I got my answer." He turned to the young sales associate, who looked nervous but honest. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Leela," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded. "Leela, thank you for treating me with respect, even when others didn't." The manager's mouth opened and closed, searching for words. "Sir, I can explain," she began, but Marcus cut her off. "Save it," he said, his tone sharper now. "Your behavior doesn't align with the values of this company. Consider this your last day here." The manager's face crumbled, but Marcus had already turned away. As he headed for the door, he stopped beside Leela. "You've got potential," he said. "How would you like to train for a leadership position?" Leela's eyes widened, and she nodded, struggling to find words. Marcus smiled briefly before walking out, leaving the entire store in stunned silence. As Marcus walked out of the store, a wave of realization swept over everyone left behind. The customers whispered among themselves, replaying what they had just witnessed. Leela stood frozen, trying to process the unexpected turn her day had taken. The manager, now speechless, slumped against the counter, the weight of her actions finally hitting her. Outside, Marcus paused for a moment, looking back at the store. It wasn't about revenge or making a scene. It was about setting a standard. Respect wasn't something that should depend on appearances, and today, he had made that message loud and clear. Inside, Leela's co-workers congratulated her, and for the first time, she felt truly seen. The experience left everyone with something to think about. For Marcus, it was a reminder of the importance of humility and fairness. And for the rest, it was a lesson they would never forget. Kindness matters more than assumptions.